Hey guys, welcome to the MC Anime Podcast. We cover anime, geek culture, Japanese aesthetics, and Asian studies. We are a multi-fandom podcast, and you can expect to hear topics in your favorite hobby or fandom activity potentially. You can find MC Anime on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Also, please check out mcanimepodcast.com, our website. Furthermore, stay tuned in for another episode.
From MCMA Podcast. We have another episode today, and we also have a special guest with us today. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. My name's Patrick. I am an actor, theater performer based out of Salt Lake City.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how we came to meet.
Yeah, so for my day job, I go to different conventions like Comic-Cons and sell t-shirts, and luckily, I ran into Willy Wonka. We started talking, and he invited me onto the show.
And yes, for anyone that doesn't know, I dressed up as Willy Wonka today. It was either between steampunk and Willy Wonka. So the mannequin with Willy Wonka won. And it works out that Willy Wonka has a new movie coming out, and everyone's recognizing the third movie, and some people are loving the character. But further ado, today's topic is going to be Friday the 13th, Theatrics Fear. So we're hosting this podcast on Friday the 13th. This is the recorded date. Now, I won't be uploading the Friday the 13th and won't be live. However, this is our Friday the 13th special, and we're going to use Patrick's experience in theater and express fear on the theater stage to represent Friday the 13th for today's night theme. First, we need to go to Friday the 13th. So Friday the 13th is synonymous with the Bible and its origins. It refers to the Last Supper, and it was the night that Judas betrayed Jesus, and it's the day after, I believe, was the crucifixion. So, why the 14th? So random? Well, it has interesting origins in that period. It's based on the story of the Last Supper. 13 people were seated at the table, and it happened on a Thursday. He was arrested that evening, crucified the next day on a Friday. So, it's symbolic of the 13 disciples at the table, which combines the two taboos from the Bible, according to Stevens. But also, with that being said, the superstition of it being 13 is a bad number. So, 13 people present, 2 atrocities committed, 1 the day after that Friday to represent that date. And they just happen to have Friday the 13th happen sometimes, not all the time, but at least once a year. I think this year was either twice or can't remember.
It does happen twice on some years.
So the fear of 13 is like you walking under a ladder, crossing paths with a black cat, or breaking a mirror. It's superstitious. Friday the 13th brings back bad luck. It's uncertain exactly when this particular tradition began. Negative traditions have served around the number of 13 for centuries. Western cultures have historically associated the number with 12, completing 12 days of Christmas, 12 days of months, and the 12 zodiacs, 12 gods, etc., etc. So with that being said, why is it unlucky? Well, 13 guests attended, and his 12 disciples, one who betrayed him the next day, was that the day of the crucifixion. So with that being said, it's unlucky because it dropped from 13 to 12, and one of them was a betrayer, which was Judas. That's why the unlucky comes in. Negative or weaker, some have suggested they also roots in tradition such as Jesus was crucified, was also said to be the day of Eve, gave Adam the faithful apple from the tree of knowledge, as well as day of Cain, killed his brother Abel. So there's a lot of theories, not just the 13th supper, but also other biblical origins. With that being said, the group that dined regularly on the 13th day of the month and in room 13 is also a popular saying as well, the 13th Club. But there's a little bit about Friday the 13th, and just a little bit in pop culture. It wasn't until 13th and Legend in 1907 with the publication of the novel Friday the 13th, written by Thomas William Lawson. This is the book that took place in New York, stockbrokers who played superstitious by the date to create chaos on Wall Street, making a killing on the market. And then we also have another adaptation later in the movie Horror, Friday the 13th, in a similar fashion, capitalizing on Friday the 13th as a model in pop culture. So that's a little bit about Friday the 13th. Now let's get into the Theatrics of Fear and all that stuff. So our talking points are going to be, we already did the origins, we're going to do creepiness and the unknown. So the creepy factor is really interesting in escalating fear because it creates tension and unexpected events.
Yes.
So it really hypes up the escalation of the situation in, like, on stage of a theater.
Mm-hmm. I think really an interesting element of comparing creepiness and fear is a direct understanding. If you understand you are afraid of something, it loses its creepiness. But creepiness really does express itself through the littler details, the things that you don't quite understand. The reason that the uncanny valley is such a big proponent of what fear is. That point in between what we understand and what we don't. And that's where creepiness causes that tingling across the spine and really causes a level of concern. And I think that concern is what drives creepiness outside of just being fearful. When you're fearful, you might be afraid to break your leg, but if something looks like it might be able to break your leg but shouldn't, then that's what makes it creepy.
Yeah. Creepy also escalates what we see as fear. So if you're afraid of it, that's one thing. But if you're in fear of it, you are absolutely, you shut down, or part of you doesn't function as normal. So that fear kicking in can actually stop certain movements of the body and your reaction to it.
Absolutely.
Now, another one that actually goes hand in hand with creepy is fear of the unknown.
Fear of the unknown.
What we don't know is also what we fear because we have no understanding of it. So there's the lack of that understanding is really essential in why the unknown is so fearful in our lives.
I think you really reached that point, which is in order to understand the fear of unknown, you have to understand not knowing, which a lot of people aren't willing to take the time to realize just what you don't know. It's impossible in a way. You have to understand, if you were a speck in a box, if you were afraid of the line that you were touching, you know that line. But to learn that you're in a box at all causes you to have a new fear of the box instead of the unknown. So being afraid of the box is a new level. We come to our points of fear by our understandings, but then the fear of the unknown is learning that there is way more beyond the box.
So let's say, for example, kidnapping. You're in a trunk, you're in complete darkness, the fear escalates because you don't know what is going on.
You have no idea what could happen.
You have no control. When you lose control, that's where fear can set in. That's really the powerful tool of fear kicking in a way to just make your mind go elsewhere.
True. Yeah. And it's something we love. We love fear in a way. It's something that the human nature comes to. We're actually at a horror convention. It's all about, the theatrics of horror. It's all about the way that we depict it. Everything that you've ever read or you've ever seen that is scary had to be written by a human mind. That human sat down and said, you know what? I understand fear and other people's fear so well that I'm going to depict it, not just for myself, but for humanity.
Yep. And it's probably interesting because humanity has IP that they can write on, just go back in the mind Think of a real life scenario and then somehow dissect that one life scenario into an entire book, into an entire screenwriting movie, whatever you want to call it. And that is why it's so powerful, because they can take, it doesn't even have to be a real life event. It can be totally made up in the mind of the person who did it and still make sense.
It's always better to guess that if they say based on a true story at the beginning.
That's when you need to watch out.
Well, they're talking about like someone did knock on a door once.
Yes.
They didn't murder everybody in the house, but they did knock on that door.
So what do they do after they knock on the door? It's kind of what if scenario a lot of times in this thing. So that kind of brings into what type of fear you're facing.
Yeah.
So the number 3, the levels of the fear you're facing.
Yes.
Is it a phobia? Is it something, fear of the darkness? Is it going to be in kind spaces, that's, enclosed? What type of level of fear you're experiencing?
So this is actually a really interesting discussion is scaling. Scales are what determine a lot of information. Kind of getting back to the fear of the unknown and not having a knowledge of that. A scale of fear is a very critical thing for somebody who's acting or who's performing to be aware of. You have to understand that, because if I say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how scary was it? 10's got to be massive, right? It's got to be like the top of the top. It's got to be the worst. But if I say on a scale of 1 to 100, how scary was it? And you say a 10, that's a 1 in a scale of 1 to 10. So that power really does apply. And in acting, we will try and look at, there's some techniques that look at the level of an emotion that you're feeling. So
it's the escalation of it too.
Exactly. The more you talk to actors about what level of fear or what level of an emotion they're experiencing while they express themselves, how are you expressing yourself? What level? That really breaks down to showing what they believe middle ground is. Because if you tell somebody to feel an emotion at a level 3, right, that's below average. An average should be at a level 5. So if I said a normally scary thing, like being afraid of the dark. Right, being afraid of the dark, I think, should be the genuine neutral of being afraid.
Yes.
Because there's anything, and then in a purely dark situation, there's anything. You turn down a dark road, you have no idea what's at the end of it.
And exactly, you don't know what's at the end of that dark road, but you also have to know what is an event that's going to be a level 6. A level 6 cannot be the fear of the dark, but more like something like there's a fire. The fires are blazing. That is a level 6 because you have no idea what's going on.
Well, the fire's
It's not like it's it's not on you.
Yeah.
But you're not at level 8 where the fire is there's explosion.
Exploding right in your face. And you're fine. Maybe you're fine at a level 8.
But you maybe people around you.
Terrified.
Well, maybe 6 feet away from you. There was someone that got blasted by shrapnel.
Yeah. How well do you know that person? Do you know them? Is that a person?
Is your reaction going to be something?
If it's a loved one,
impactful,
that's where it bumps up to a 9. You know, because if somebody you loved blew up right in front of you, then you'd be losing it. And a 10 would be not only that, but where a total life change, an entire paradigm shift. It's not only it's your home that blew up. It's something that you lose completely.
You're so distraught that
nothing.
It's not even
the same.
It's distraught is a level of fear that combines grief, stress, and fear all at the same time. But when you in that moment, you will lose your composure. You have no composure. That shock of death or that traumatic event is it will take a long time to process in that first 30 minutes after it happened. And then even after it happened, those different stages of how to deal with it after the fact weeks later. So that can get into PTSD, heightened emotions, and more crazy stuff like that.
And those come down the way, right? We could say something like a 7 is going to change your life, right? But a level 10, your life is undoubtedly changed.
That one event has influenced so much thereafter that you don't even realize what it your influence.
Nothing like
It could do your trust. It can do maybe not going to certain neighborhoods, maybe isolating you from certain groups of people, events. Maybe you're totally closed off, or maybe you're so fearful of being alone, you just go desperate out into the crowd and just be with everybody. Force yourself to be there when it's not helpful for you to be there. So there's different reactions in that, how it comes about.
How can you solve that fear? Yeah, because you're looking for what some people might call a vice, or a scapegoat, or a
escape of a means.
escape. Yes. An escape.
So there's different ways to do that, but there is no correct way to do it because of the fact of everyone's fear reactions individual, just like PTSD. If a soldier came home and their extreme reaction of fear is heightened by the environment in which they had the tour in, let's say they had loud noises of gunfire around. Well, that can translate to real life into loud noises, similar situations, even something as being at the grocery store randomly can trigger a PTS moment.
You would never be able to control your PTSD. Well, I can't say never, but like usually
it's treatable, but you have to have help to do it.
It takes a lot of interpretation.
But a lot of people don't want to admit they have it.
Yes, that's a big problem. There's a big trouble with people failing to address just what level of fear they've experienced, whether or not they're still scared, and how to actually heal from it. I would say at some point we're probably going to have to talk about healing, but we'll stay in the spooky.
Yes. And, you also have, that's just one level of it. There's also the common phobia type fear, that the fear of specific things, clowns, radioactive phobia, water, fish, things are specifically in a phobia state to be afraid of.
Absolutely.
Those are more individual experiences that they break down. Sometimes that phobia, they can't function if that thing's around them in that environment. If it happens, it can literally be complete shutdown as a result.
Yeah. I don't know if it's still true, but there was a lot of studies on like what the fear of clowns really represented.
Yes.
And a lot of people attune it to the idea that like clowns are usually seen in a very propped up state as like corpses. When people pass away, they have to be, to lack of a better term,
clowned up.
Yeah, dolled up, clowned up. And so they end up being turned into these stiff clowns in a way. And so when people wear a bright white face paint and overly large eyes and, sunken and exaggerated features, suddenly that reminds us of death.
Modern makeup, to make the viewing look really well done can also strike as a potential trigger just in that way.
I have a weird one that's personally experienced. I was in a show called The Love of Three Oranges, which is a classic Italian comedy, which is a clown show, or it has clown show elements. And when I was playing a clown during this show, they do a thing called blocking your eyebrows, where you take a glue stick and you rub it all over your eyebrows until they're completely flat. And so as soon as your eyebrows are completely flat and blocked, they then go over with a neutral tone, either that bright white we were talking about, which is so traditional, or like the skin tone, and then blot out your eyebrows. So you have no more eyebrows and you can draw on an expression. And that's how clowns do it. But in this case, I was that clown. And me without eyebrows is a sinister sight. Yes. There is not a way you can draw those eyebrows back on.
Yes.
It's not doom and gloom. I've got that protruding, shadowy forehead, my eyebrow line, my eyes are just shaded.
Yep.
So as soon as you lose that positive expression location, my cheery disposition turns into absolute gloom, no matter how happy you're trying.
Yeah. And you really don't really think how much your eyebrows make you expressive. Just doing like this, or having up and down, winking at someone,
wiggling,
your forehead going up with the eyebrow expression. All of that is human expression itself.
Oddly enough, that touches back on that uncanniness. You know, we talk about what robots and humans look like. The difference is we don't have those cues that we are literally evolved to notice.
Yes.
We have grown with humanity in a way that we expect and need that subtlety.
Yep.
And if you don't have it, you don't know. You don't know. It's the fear of the unknown. You're just afraid.
Yeah, and also with robots, there's a reason why they can't necessarily feel human emotions. They don't have the capability to understand the complexity of what a human emotion can be.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful tool when using fear as a tactic to tell the story, or even have shock factor. Shock factor is the ability to have something that is chilling and can terrify you at the same time.
Yeah, to get shock factor to play out correctly, you really have to lead in with some information, have them understand that
You
there's
have to have a
killer on
build
the
up.
loose. You know, have them understand that there's a knife in the room. There's actually a term called Chekhov's gun,
Yep.
and the sentiment means that if you have a gun on stage, the gun must be fired. Now, whether or not you actually believe in that, or write to it, or follow it at all, it doesn't stop the fact that the reason Chekhov's gun matters is because there is a pure level of shock. That gun can do so much more to a story, back to that level 10 fear.
Yep.
Permanent life change, permanent end of somebody's life, potentially, or something's life.
And the gun firing is symbolizing of something is going to happen.
And it's a perfect.
We don't know what's going to happen. Sometimes it's obstructed. You don't even see it.
Yeah.
So that also can create more emotions into that event, in the climax of that event.
Correct.
And this is where we get into like an eerie setting or a suspense factor. Because shock value can be suspense.
Yes.
And in suspenseful moments, you can have a build-up. You can have it suddenly happen and not have that build-up.
Yes.
But then you can have a de-escalation after that build-up, and then maybe the fear level will go down after it all happened. So let's say, for example, the first scene, those foreshadowing an event that happened 12 hours right in current time.
Yeah.
But then they foreshadow back 12 hours before.
Yeah.
That event, you say, what is going on?
How is it gonna get here?
Then they had to do it. They explained the story, how it got there.
Yes.
And also it could be first scene, boom, you're on the wedding, someone objects, and then there was entire mafia coming in. Why is the mafia here? And then you have all the police show up, and then the mafia getting the shootout with the mafia, and the wedding is behind the church.
And then we flash back, and it turns out it's just the way that the not the priest, but the husband was dealing, and maybe he gambled away his life savings for no reason.
And maybe it's totally not even happening at all. So
maybe
not knowing what's going to happen.
Maybe it's the projection of the husband to be afraid of the mafia. He's like, man, it could happen, but it doesn't. Or like, what is the worst case scenario for these people to experience? There was something else. Tension is really best.
I love tension.
It's best explained and interpreted very physically and obvious.
The best tension plot I can think of is soap opera. The reason why the tension in a soap opera is so there, because every single episode is the build-up of every single other episode.
Yeah.
And American soap operas are pretty famous for having the story told 5 seasons and still referencing the previous season before.
Yeah.
So that build-up tension is all the drama that's happening over time. So that's how they build up tension to have viewers to go 5 days a week to keep viewing that show and the daily programming that goes with it.
Yeah, I would say if you want to think about how to like structure tension, you really could just take a little string. Imagine a string, and you take a rock. A rock has to, or it's something heavy. Something has to trap that string. Now the string is attached to something, but it doesn't have tension. But if you start pulling that string, you really start to get the fibers pulling and locked out.
The more stress on it,
The more stress. Yes, exactly. Take a guitar. That string gets stressed. Suddenly it can play music. But if you keep turning that tuning fork and just keep going, it's going to snap, and the snap is going to depend on the tension. Yeah, if it's too loose, then the amount of force applied to the string has to be immense, and if it's too tight, it could just be the smallest breath or touch that causes that whole string to just snap out.
And also, this is a good thing when you have a lake throwing pebbles. Every rock you skip has a current.
And a ripple effect.
That ripple effect keeps going further and further away. Same thing happens with waves. When the wave washes up on the shore, it hits the crest and it keeps coming and it hits the shore, but another one keeps away from it. So that the initial motion from the boat going by is already maybe 3 miles felt.
It was already in the plans. It was already in the wave.
The same thing happens with a tsunami. A vibration of tension is released from an earthquake, volcanic, a landslide, whatever it is causing it, for the water to have that motion, and it carries over.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can carry hundreds of miles and then hit the coast. Then all of a sudden, this big wave turns into a gigantic wave because of the decrease in elevation going up to the shoreline.
Yeah. And, I think this is a really good point to recognize. Like, we can explain emotions by breaking down a rock and a string, or the way a guitar works, or the fact that a tsunami is bringing these massive, massive waves into the entire lived-in districts. But what does that look like in a person? How does a person carry that? And it's important to know that we all do to some degree. And it's usually in the same ways, oddly enough. And rarely is it not.
We show fear and how we act. We show in our body language. We have a facial expression that goes with it.
Facial expression.
We can control our pitch depending on the level of terror that is happening. If someone just died, some people might break down, but some people might scream as a reaction.
Yeah.
So understanding the nuances of how we're going to act is so more powerful sometimes, because how do you express fear when there's no sound?
Yeah.
The way to do that is your facial expressions, your body, your nervousness, you're running away, you're clutching in the closet, you're getting smaller, you're trying to do, let's say, you're on an earthquake, cover your head, you get smaller to eliminate the danger, to minimize what could happen to you.
There's a really interesting fact that when we are watching things, we have expectations. As we are getting more information in a story, we have expectations. That's what makes an actor a good actor or a bad actor. And so really, the idea of expression begins on the witness, the person who is actually taking in the behavior that matches the emotion. You could say this also is the reason why some people have to say, "Oh, I have callous humor." Joking about my family dying helps me
have an escape, to have that a coping mechanism to help me figure out why this traumatic event happened the way it did. And I still don't understand why it happened, because it's just a human response to it.
Exactly.
Like, for example, when there's a bad situation going on and you had misfortune, I'm going to laugh. It's just going to come out
of the body.
It's out and about. And also, in reaction to fear, is so powerful.
Yeah.
Because, there is a way to react, but there's also another way to act in another way.
And, that's the real thing is, what I was going to bring up is that, because there is that natural inclination for the witness to project what they expect, a neutral expression in acting will do so much work. If you see somebody, if you ever want to try this out, just get a couple friends, and then say, "Hey, I want you to guess what emotion I'm expressing," and then don't express any emotion, and make every one of them say exactly what they think, and you will get a variety of answers.
Because people's perception on a neutral feeling is how they think it's
How they
perceived.
think they should.
There is no negative or positive in that. They just think what they're saying is what is showing.
The witness has that level of anticipation to have those emotions. So if you just got in a car crash and you step out of a car and your face is blank, people are going to think that makes them angry. They're going to be like, oh, that's rage. Or they're going to be like, oh my God, they're thinking about their loss.
That's shock.
That's shock, exactly.
Like just sitting here.
But what comes to mind? If I say, dude, show me shock, what comes to mind?
Blank face.
Really? See, I would say a lot of people would say like an O face. They'd be like, oh,
But that's not what the shock I'm looking for. You said a car crash is a blank face.
You're so right. And that's the thing, is when you think that these normal patterns work and you rely on them,
there is no normal pattern.
Exactly. There's no normal pattern.
That's how you're going to react to the different stimuli in that situation.
Exactly.
Stimuli causes the human being to have such an action based on maybe their lack of experience.
Yeah.
Or their experience could maybe train them better to react in another way instead of the usual way.
Exactly. And really, that brings me into what I would consider my ultimate comment, which is there's this thing in acting that we'd like to talk about. I don't remember the exact first teachers on it, but it is called action and reaction. It is a sort of a flow. You have action and then you have reaction.
So like the action of a carjacking, someone's reaction to that is go chase them down to get the car back.
Exactly.
Or maybe it's to call the police immediately after it happens.
Yeah, we can break down sort of like what's going on in both people's lives in those situations, right?
Yeah.
The carjacker has a reason to have this car. It could be as low and boring as I want to and I feel like it, or it can be as extreme as something
my
like,
dad's in the hospital, I need a car, are you in my way, or I'm escaping the police and you're the only one in my way to get it.
This is the only way for me out. And you see, there's so much story there. How many stories can you tell about a man escaping the police or a man whose father is in the hospital?
And the best way to do that is multiple levels of action and reaction based on different people's experience in that same situation.
Understanding where you want to go with a story and how you want to tell the story tells you what action to focus on, right? If we're talking about the recipient of the carjacking, then the carjacker needs to be the clear action. We don't really need a lot of his detail. We just need his action to be honest, which is, I am honestly carjacking you. And then the reaction of the carjacked is going to be the emotion.
The emotion of the person having a jab.
Exactly.
Let's say you're going down the road and the car's at the stoplight. You're running as fast as you can. Well, guess what?
You're going to see a lot of emotions there.
You're going to have running, but if you have someone beside you, they're going to react to your action as a multi-action reaction effect.
So as we're having a scene in any scenario, either on film or in a theater, you are going to have that action, the thing that happens. Then your reaction needs to not just be, a director is going to come up and say, all right, you are going to feel sad because your car was stolen. But really, your reaction to a car being stolen is going to be multifaceted.
Yeah.
There's some people out there who have such great insurances that the second their car is stolen, they're just going to call their insurance company. They're going to be bummed, but then they're going to buy a better car somehow. It's like,
yeah,
they're going to be fine, and they know it. So why would they freak out like somebody this is the last car? They didn't have time to register it. They don't have what they can have or what they need. And they know that losing this car is losing another $5,000 to them.
Yes.
That's going to be a much more dramatic and true reaction to the behavior.
Let's say the person who stole the car gets scot-free, steals the car.
Yeah.
Now they just drive this car around for months and months. But this car has an APB put on it. Mm-hmm. Let's say this car is not found months later. They actually match it, find the car. Let's say a police is parked randomly on the street.
Yeah.
They scan the car, they put it in the system. 6 months before, there was an APB on it. It's a stolen vehicle. That's how they find that stolen vehicle.
Now we got tension.
Now you're going to create the tension. Where they are now, if the car is here, Where are they at right now? Why did they dump it?
Has this thief seen success? Because he got away with this, was he able to have a 9-to-5 job that actually made him a better
dive, and we don't even know they died.
Yeah, we don't even know where they are. There's a level of like, what could happen to that player, and what emotions are we going to experience? And this does happen. I mean, my ex's car was stolen, and it was found in the back of a hotel. There was no other lead. They just found a car that happened to have a crooked license plate. A crooked license plate was all it took for my ex to get a car.
Identification to have that car be found later.
For it to stand out. And otherwise it would have absolutely been ignored.
So the attention to detail is key in developing a story like this. Let's say, instead of they stole the blue car, let's say a car.
Yeah.
They stole the blue Ford Fusion from the grandmother who was riding to the doctor's appointment.
There you go.
See how much of anticipation the doctor's appointment, the grandma can't get there, the car is stolen. But no, it's a Pacific car. It's a blue Fusion.
Yeah.
It's a Pacific blue car.
We know
now it's identifiable. It's a grandma is at loss because now whatever cause and effect happens later, whole reaction's going to be different. And now it could upset an entire day. You don't even know.
These are important details for not only writers, but directors and actors to all have in mind, or to have like at least some level of emotional connection to, because when you heard what those expressed terms were, you had a reaction. You had an emotional attachment. And those emotional attachments define what you see in that character way more than what I see or what our host sees.
Let's say the carjacker is a repeat offender at stealing cars. So let's say one time he stole a car and it went totally wrong.
Yeah.
He banged his head and now he has amnesia. He can't track down where he was that particular night. Now he has to go on a journey to find that repressed memories in that event when his body did that.
You know, actually, and I think this isn't too spoilery, there's a book, Seven and a Half Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. It's a fictional story, but in the beginning of this story, our protagonist wakes up and has no memory of who he is. And so as he's trying to figure himself out, it's like the carjacking scenario.
Yes.
If the last thing you did when you're trying to figure out who you were was commit a massive crime, then who are you going to be the day that you realize that that's actually who you are?
Same thing happened in a TV show I watched, You, on Netflix.
Oh.
It was so many events. He woke up with a body. 2 different seasons. In the beginning of the season, he woke up with a body. In the first couple episodes, he's trying to figure out how it got there.
Yeah.
And it's creating the tension already in the episode. And he doesn't know how it got there because either he was so drunk, he was put on LSD.
Yeah.
Or he got on a substance that completely blocked him out. He only remembers this and this, but can't piece out together this. He went to this restaurant, but why did he go? He went here to have something, but he has to figure out why he went.
Understanding your direction really pieces together what it means to be human. If we don't have our direction, then how can we understand who we are? When you lose your sense of direction, when you lose your sense of self, when you lose these things, welcome to that unknown, really.
Yeah.
Well, I really think I've had a blast talking to you here today.
And one last reaction is fight versus flight. Because it's a basic reaction to fear, but it's studied so much that how are you going to respond in a given situation if, say, that carjacker hit? Are you going to fight them? Or are you going to flight and go back?
You know, crazy enough, there's actually a third in fight-flight.
Yes.
Fight and flight, and then freeze.
Yes. You don't do anything at all.
Yeah, freezing is for me, experiencing freezing, either in myself or in people I love, is definitely the most concerning. But fight and flight is the more, directly writing interest.
Well, freezing happens a lot of times when a thug is stealing a purse and no one does anything.
Nobody does anything.
They just watch it happen.
I don't want to get shot. I don't want to get stabbed. I don't want to stop
Exactly. They just, I don't want to intervene.
Yeah. And so you get a lot of different stories when you freeze. But I think in a lot of cases, I mean, just like the action and reaction, if we have a protagonist in front of a grandmother whose handbag is being stolen, we want to see them reach out at least. We don't need to shoot them immediately. And so that means that we get to see our protagonist do something.
Yeah, and maybe that protagonist is like, they just happen to, let's say they're drinking. They just come on out and like, boom, the person runs into them.
Yeah.
And then they react, like, what are you doing? And they're on the ground. And then someone behind them that's already chasing cuts it up to them.
Yeah.
And they stop the entire act without doing much, just walking.
Just because of the situation. And that is your action.
That's how unexpected circumstances can create this atmosphere of...
And grow on the sense of the fight. Yeah.
Yeah. You can grow in the story, not only expand it, de-escalate it, expand, escalate some more. Maybe your story doesn't even need fear to begin with. Sometimes the lack of fear is compelling because there is no fear to tell the story. It's just a good story overall.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely something there. You know, but it's interesting you say that because it's hard. Imagine a story that doesn't tell any fear. You know, even as simple as like a boy lost his balloon is terrifying. You know, not exactly terrifying on like everybody's scale, but imagine being a 5-year-old losing a balloon. You're going to be so sad. You're going to want to see that kid get his balloon back, or you're going to, you want to know that we get the resolve. And that's actually called catharsis.
I love catharsis. I haven't heard that in a while.
Catharsis is really what lets you say, and know that everything's all right. And, sometimes you have to give it to yourself. Sometimes you have to write it in. Sometimes it's there. But sometimes if you think you're so scared of something and you want to quit, stick it out, because humans under most conditions will respect and understand that you need catharsis.
Also, you have the adaptability factor. Every human has the ability to tough it out to a degree.
Yeah.
Survive it, go through it, even if the most extreme possibility happens. They have time to heal from it, but anything that's been fearful, just know time is the best medicine for it. Time and fear, time typically has an empathy effect.
Yeah.
It'll over time be less and less and less.
Yeah, I think this is the exact point that we should jump into the healing. Healing is an important step in life. And in order to heal, you do need time. You need to be willing to express yourself. Don't be afraid to say, I've been afraid. Don't be afraid to say that I am currently afraid, and accept it, because that's the first way to leave it.
Yes.
And start talking to professionals. Me and my podcast host, we're probably not therapists. I'm not currently.
Well, I'm seeking therapy myself, but I have things to discuss. It's not really fear of discussing. I'm discussing just general things that set me back.
Yeah.
And,
and
having help is not necessarily a bad thing.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter how much level of help you get.
So
talking to someone in any capacity is good.
Talk to a stranger at a bar if they don't look like they're going to
If they're
steal your...
slinging some slugs, you sling some slugs with them. Have a camaraderie in that moment. Just sometimes be vulnerable.
Yeah.
If you're vulnerable, there's many things you can get off your chest in a way that's not going to be damaging to you.
And
it might be damaging to someone else because they don't want to hear it at that time, but you can't control when that's said.
Yeah.
But sometimes it just comes out.
True.
So if fear comes out of you, let it come out.
Yeah.
Think of a way to have a coping to lessen it or stop it. It doesn't have to be always to Friday the 13th. Do not think about fear. Fear is a daily activity. I just really think Friday the 13th is a good message in fear and suspense and thriller, psychological, all that together, horror.
Maybe you'll find a place to like it.
Yeah, you appreciate it for what it was, not what it is now.
Exactly. So I appreciated this. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Where can I find you? And before we get off?
Yeah. I'm kind of just out there. I don't have a lot of social medias right now. So, I mean, if you're ever in Salt Lake, feel free to drop by Market the Bistro. It's a little vegan bistro where I perform and do a lot of theater out of. And yeah, my name's Patrick, and it's been wonderful to be here.
Yep. Well, this is MC, and the last thing I'm going to say, the only thing you can feel is fear itself.
True.
So, this concludes Friday the 13th, Theatrics Fear. Hope to be you, and thank you, Patrick, for being here.
Yeah.
Very fun.
Thank you very much.
This concludes another episode of MC Anime Podcast. MC Anime Podcast is available on podcast directories like Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. We also have our website at mcanimepodcast.com. If you want to directly support us, then follow Patreon blog MC Anime. Finally, if you want services for hire, then we're available on Fiverr for audio and video production, graphic design, idea consulting, and blog and article writing.